Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 669, recording live today on Wednesday the 19th of May. Yes, indeed it is. Finally getting around to a bit of not quite so freezing weather in the UK. Summer seems to have been deferred this year, so I'm hoping it's going to get a bit nicer, but hey, it's not a weather programme. This is a podcast to do with music technology and all the associated topics. Synthesizers, software, production, live production, streaming, all of the kind of things that surround the modern music industry, as it were. I want to say you can get this podcast in audio via Spotify, Stitcher, Google, iTunes, Alexa, all of those kind of good places. We post it every time. We're thinking about the possibility of streaming this to Discord on a community server with a sort of something called a stage. I need to look into that and figure out whether we can do all of that, but that might be something easy, so it might just give us another avenue, as it were. I want to say thank you very much to our friends over at iZotope for supporting, and also you must check out their they've got a community program thing at the moment, community bundle, I think it's called. I only just spotted it, which you could get 11 plugins for $49, and you might even be able to use your is that the right one? Yes, you might be able to use the Sonic 10 checkout on 10%. You might save an additional 10%. I can't vouch for that, but hey, be a nice little extra if you could. And also we'll be hearing from Mode a little bit later. Also want to say, if you feel like supporting on Patreon, we've been posting a few more things up there. The URL is patreon.com/Sonicstate. We've got, I think I posted an ad-free version of one of our IK Uno Synth Pro, which is turning out to be a really good little thing. This was just a thing we did with the developers, and there's a few other bits and pieces up there which has been going up recently. This is all exclusive video. It's not stuff you generally get via our YouTube channel, so it's a great way to kind of get a little bit extra, as well as patches and downloads and, you know, all that other stuff that comes along. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much to our guests, because they are here today as well. Well, actually, let's just say hello to our chatties as well. We've got those in the YouTube. We've got IRC, the address you could see on the left there, sonictalk.com/live will take you to the current live thing and the IRC address. And also we've got our Twitchers, Discorders and YouTubers, which are also replicated there. So let's say hi to our guests. I finally got round to that. First of all, we have Mr. Ty Unwin, who we haven't seen for a while, in glorious 4:3, proper 80s TV style, but with a very high definition image. How are you, Ty? You well? Media composer, studio owner, all of those things. How you doing?
General twat. Yeah. I don't know why it keeps going to this 4:3. I don't really know. Is it a setting? Mark will be able to tell me this. Is it a setting on the camera?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It probably is, but I don't know what it.
Okay.
I don't know why. It would be the HDMI out format, I would imagine.
I will look into it and resolve it. But meanwhile, I'm going to stay 80s styly.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a conscious decision, obviously, that I've made, and I'm sticking with it. Yay.
How are you, though, Ty? Are you well? Have you been busy and all of those things?
Busy, still trying to sort out the studio and the new studio, and yeah, just sorting and getting a bit stressed. I mean, one of the bits I think might come to, because it links in with one of the subjects, but generally, yeah, absolutely fine. Just still trying to get this room finished. I mean, yeah, the days of... Did you remember the days when we used to do complete studio redesigns and rebuilds and whatever? And we used to start in the morning, and by 6 o'clock it was finished, after we'd plugged in our MIDI sequencer and 3 synths and plugged them into the mixer. Do you remember those days?
A little bit. Well, I do. I blame the patch bay. That was what always basically took it from a 2-day project into months of
I haven't even got near the patch bay yet. I mean, you know, yikes. I swear to God, I'm going to have a very long grey beard by the time I finished this. So,
well, but it's all good. At least there'll be some hair on your head, because we've got a team this week of fairly non-hirsute individuals. But thank you for joining us. We'll now go over to Mr. Steve Hillier, who's over there. Steve Hillier, dub star, educator, DJ, songwriter, all of those things. Haven't seen you for ages, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm good as well, as a non-hairsuit individual. Just kind of looking forward to going out for a pint and I'm not freezing and sitting outside. You know what I mean? It's been a bit of a labour of love for the last 5 weeks. So that's something that I'm looking forward to this week. And but beyond that, I've just come to the end of what was quite a demanding, long project, and just freeing up some more time for composing and writing, and also sorting out my studio as well.
Studio sorting out seems to be a theme. Do you think something to do with spring? I don't know. Maybe that's what's going on. It seems that maybe that's a thing. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I found eBay's been very helpful just recently. Just it's funny, you open up the cupboard in one of your studio rooms and you discover things that you bought in 1992 that you thought would be really useful one day. 29 years later, it's time to give up on that, I think.
You're actually having a declutter, are you? That's impressive.
Yeah. If anyone needs a garlic press, I've got at least 4.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why you would need one of those in the studio, but I mean, I won't ask. Well, I did ask, I suppose.
when needs must.
Well, if you've got to have
anyway,
garlic,
nice to
you've got
be
to have
here,
garlic. Yes. Anyway, lovely. Well, let's start off. I'm going to start with this topic, actually, because I just think it's kind of interesting. This is the new Cherry Audio PS20, which is it's an interesting idea. You know, MS-20 in software. You know, they've been releasing a lot of products, but this is a polyphonic MS-20 called the PS20, which is an interesting idea. They've also, I think, added effects and digital reverbs. MPE support was nice to see, but they've also added MPE, sub-oscillator or VCO1, PWM modulation. Yes, they kept the pitch tracker envelope follower. Obviously, you can skin it, you can do all of that stuff. Yeah, and it's only $29, which just seems very unlikely. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a crazy price. I mean, Cherry Audio are really smashing out these kind of affordable things. I mean, I wasn't hearing an awful lot of MS-20 character in the demo there, but you know, that might just be the patch choice, because the MS-20 is capable of quite a lot of different types of sounds. So, you know, maybe the one in my head is not the one that they've focused on. I know. Steve, did you go MS-20? I can't see. Is that one back there, or is that an MS-10?
Yeah, there is. It's just here. It's just here, and this is my synthesizer that I go to for bass.
Right.
It's just for analog bass anyway. So no, it sounds really good. You know, I tried out the P20 earlier today, knowing we were talking about it, and you know, I initially kind of thought this doesn't really sound that much like my Korg MS-20 just behind me, but then I realised after a while that actually my Korg MS-20 doesn't really sound like anybody else's Korg MS-20.
Yeah, I think that's the way it goes, isn't it?
No, it's a sort of unique thing. But the longer that I use the P20, I started to really quite like it, actually, and yeah, it does have that MS-20 thing about it, in the sense that it can be aggressive sounding without it sounding like it's working really hard, if you know what I mean, like it's trying to impress you. It just has a similar character. What I thought initially, after I got over that, was I'm not really sure if I would use this in a context where I would require a polysynth, and yet playing some chords and mucking around with it, it was sort of taking me into areas of polyphonic work that I just, you know, and creating sounds that I wouldn't normally have thought of using. So it was kind of interesting, but ultimately I kind of realized that what would be really useful for me and for what I do is that I've spent plenty of time layering up my Korg MS-20 to play chords, like just 2-note chords.
Right.
Big fan of 2-note chords,
yeah,
particularly in the bottom end of arrangements. And this is where I think the P20 could work for me. So we're not doing big sort of polysynth kind of work like you would do with a Jupiter or a Juno or DX7 or whatever. Maybe it's slightly more limited polyphony that's going to be how it works for me, I suppose. But it's an interesting plugin, definitely. Yeah, and for €29, you really
exactly. There's hardly. Well, the other thing I noticed, if I bring the picture up here, there's a voice assignment, so you can actually unison all of those and detune them, which That's, where there was a piece by Brent March from ADSR who was going through some stuff, and some of those bass sounds did actually sound pretty good. I don't know, is that some synths, are they supposed to be polyphonic? You've gone all dark. It's gone dark in your room, yeah. I can still see you, but let me see if I can lift.
I can still see you. It hasn't gone that dark.
No, it's just dark.
Are you just trying to make me look even paler than I really am?
That's it.
Is that what
no,
you're
I
trying
wasn't.
to do?
I've just turned out. What do you think, though? I mean, $29 or whatever. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
There's two things here. There's two ways of looking at it. First of all, as you say, $29. I mean, it's ridiculous because it's great. It's a great plugin that sounds good. I mean, it has that kind of cherry audio sound. I find that a lot of the cherry audio stuff, I'd love someone that really knew what they were doing to look under the hood and actually see the coding, to see, because they do all sound. They have a sound, and there's a kind of, I don't want to say a generic sound, because
maybe that's. I mean, it's possible that they're doing that thing that Arturia started out doing and then stopped doing.
Yeah,
which is basically having a TAL engine and just giving it the features of that synth.
A different newer.
They don't do that anymore. I might add.
No, Arturia, no, they don't. And it's not that they all sound the same. That's not true at all. It's not that they all sound the same, but there is a kind of uniformity, shall we say, to the way they sound. And so what I spent some time doing was, because I've got one of the, I think I told you I got one of the new MS-20, the white ones.
Oh yeah.
So I got one of those, and I've got the module, and I've got the mini. So I put those all.
You get the desktop.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's the one for me.
It is. No, you're absolutely right. The reason I bought the white one was because it's white, and we know what I'm like with my stupid ways. So I had them all, and then I compared it to to this one, and also to Korg's own MS-20 plugin. And the only thing I didn't compare it to, I've got the MS-20 on the Oasis, because they had a plugin.
All right.
On the Oasis was 20, but I think a lot of the coding in the Korg software is similar or the same. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does this one sound like when you put them next to one another? Does this one sound like my MS-20s? That, as you say, they all sound different. No, it doesn't. There's not a lot for me of MS-20 in there. The MS-20 Korg MS-20 software is closer to an MS-20. But that's losing the focus here, which is it's $29, and for $29 it makes no difference to anybody whether it sounds like an MS-20 or doesn't sound like an MS-20. It's a versatile synth that you could quite happily do whole tracks with, because it's got enough versatility in there with the filters, and kind of obviously with the new additions, whatever. It's a great plugin for that kind of price, but it's not, don't think you're going to get an MS-20 for that kind of money, but it's great. I mean, it's, I'll use it. It's on the laptop, and I'll be using it. So it's,
the one a couple of sounds I heard from the Brent March video was the that kind of square wave bass, all their square wave hollow pads where you're using square waves and playing that, they just sound, they have a certain thing, and the MS-20 has a very specific square wave sound.
Yes.
I mean, this is before you can start to add the peak, because on the original MS-20, which, I mean, I'm sure I've said this before because it involves PWM, there's only a manual control of the PWM. You could get a modification. They made the desktop module, which in my mind was almost, that's what the MS-20 should have been in the first place, because it had granular control of the individual oscillator pitches. It also had oscillator sync, which the original didn't, and it also had MS. And I just think it sounded fantastic, the MS-20 module. And so this has got all of that, so you've got access to those things, but it's not necessarily going to sound the same. But how do you reach for the module much? Because I must admit I did a demo of it.
Yeah, when it was one of the things that lived in here, and I have to say, in this room there isn't actually a place for the module, but I have to say, having messed with it again to do this, there was a huge bit of me going, I think that module needs to come into this room rather than the other room. So because of this, I have a feeling space will be made for the module to come back in, because the white one was going to go in here, but I think the white one will not go in here. I'll go in the other room, and the modules are going to come into here. So
right, I think you might have made the right choice there, if I may say so.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it is those additions, and it's only when you kind of put them next to one another, you do start to miss it when you don't have it. But as I said, with this plugin, please don't think I'm not being damning. It's cheap and cheapful,
but it's really got a lot going for it.
Very useful. Very useful. Yeah.
Just a bit. Let's have just a quick scroll. Yeah, it's €49/dollars after the initial launch period. So, yeah. And there's a few sounds in here, but like I say, I wasn't getting pure. I mean, the MS-20. I mean, bearing in mind the original MS-20s, they all sound radically different because there were different filter types on them, and also they age at different rates. I mean, I've got one which has got a bit of rust on it, and it screams like crazy, and it's also very unstable. I don't use it very often, partly because it's also got it's a non-standard control voltage. So you have to use S-trig, and you have to use. It's hertz volts rather than volt per octave, so it's not the sort of thing you hook up very often. But as an instrument, you might pick it in and plug it in. I know that lots of people swear by them, and so yeah. And as Steve was saying, it's his bass machine, so go for it. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. I think actually what I might do is just have a little word from our friends over at Modal. Between topics, this of course is the Modal Cobalt 8. Which is the 8-voice extended virtual analog synth. Very attractive looking, I might say. Innovative oscillators with 34 algorithms, morphable 4-pole ladder filter, 29 endless encoders for real-time control and controlling external stuff, which is worth mentioning. Internal sequencer and arpeggiator MP support for expression, which works very nicely. Modal app for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, and VST3AU. If you want to check out more, go over to bit.ly/get_modal, and you can find out more about their stuff right there. So let's go into. I'm going to go to the next topic along, and just because this is interesting, and it might have sort of resonance in terms of some of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of studio. So this is the Wilson Audio Chronosonic. Amazing looking speakers, really interesting. I mean, this is all marketing fluff, but each of those modules can be adjusted microscopically, so in terms of aligning the drivers over time, which, as we know, is very critical when it comes to speaking. I mean, this guy is, he's absolutely devoted to high-end audio. There is a bit of snake oil, perhaps. I mean, and these are insanely expensive. It's like the Formula One of, hi-fis. These are at like $700,000 or pounds, and you need. I think it's. Let me see. Is it? They're £900. They weigh £900 each per channel. Easily done. And what was the other thing? It was. I'm just trying to see. There was some more stats I had here.
Almost countless refinements.
I just thought. I mean, we can all laugh and go, "Oh, that's ridiculous! What a ludicrous kind of concept." Because I mean, it's and they're passive. Let's not forget. So $700,000, and they're passive, and you'd need. I think it's 6 amps. To drive them. I think I had a picture of the back bit. Let me see if I can find it. I'll have to. I mean, time alignment, because normally modern speakers now have a lot of DSP in them to align the time and kind of correct the room, and this is kind of old school, but the thing that makes you can adjust them by absolutely microscopic amounts of timing. Presumably when you buy them, you have to have some kind of expert in with some insanely expensive measuring equipment to make sure that where you sit is it, because I mean the thing is that they're only going to, if you adjust them that much, they're only going to sound that good in one very specific space, but I bet they sound amazing, and it's the high-end kind of hero product, I suppose. I'm going to come to you, Ty, because I know you went through this whole thing about, which speakers should you get and whatnot. I mean, these things they're a bit of a statement. You'd have to have them quite high up. You wouldn't be able to put them behind your desk. That's the only problem. They wouldn't be practical in a studio environment. They're more for hi-fi, right?
They're totally 100% for hi-fi. I mean, the thing is, there's a market for this, because at the end of the day, if you think there's plenty of rich people in this world and they want their toys and they're not into music, they're not into studios, you get rich studio owners who just buy loads of synths and that kind of thing. But these people, they want their toys, so they buy cars and flash hi-fi and all this kind of thing. A lot of it, I have to say, sometimes, because I've got quite a lot of what I consider high-end hi-fi. So my main hi-fi is worth about 20 grand or something, which I consider to be quite high-end. But obviously, compared to this, it's absolutely nothing. It's absolutely peanuts. But over the years, because I've bought a lot of hi-fi, so I've managed to listen to some of these really high-end stuff, but like 70 grand speakers or 150 grand speakers. I've heard them. I've sat and listened to them. You're right, in terms of amplification, because they're passive, you're going to need to spend realistically at least another 100k just to get something reasonable, and that literally is 100k would get you something reasonable to power these, not what you'd really need. So it goes into, £1 million. Realistically, £1 million is if you're going to use these like that. And there's a market for this. And
I suppose.
do they sound that different? You see, this is the issue. And this is what I learned when
You'd convince yourself, wouldn't you, if you'd spend that much money?
That's the thing, though. But the thing is, it's like an inverted exponential hi-fi like speakers is. The difference between £100 per speakers and £1,000 per speakers is huge. I mean, humongous. And then a difference between £1,000 and £5,000 is a lot, but not that much. And then between 5,000 and 20,000 is a little less. And then it gradually, every difference gets less and less and less the higher up you go. But the reality is that's what you're paying for. And the difference between these, for example, and a pair of £100,000 speakers will not be a humongous amount. It will be better, but it won't be a humongous difference. But people are willing to pay that, and a lot of it, when you get to a certain level, it's also about the build quality and what it's made of. It's not just about sound; it's about aesthetics, and it's about the quality of the material and the engineering. And the fact that you can get this down to is it fifth of a millionth,
2 millionths of a second.
Second in time, in time alignment. That in itself is it's like a laboratory tool. And
maybe if you were sort of fixed, maybe if you were actually wheelchair bound and you couldn't move your upper body or your head, it would be perfect, because you'd be always in the perfect position, wouldn't you? So, but
the thing that they don't. I mean, when you see all the advertising for this is what I find hilarious. When you see the advertising, the pictures, and all this kind of thing, they always show it in a very rich penthouse with lots of glass, and And the reality is, if you put those speakers in a normal room acoustic like that, and put a pair of 40 grand speakers in that kind of, you would not really hear anything. The only value in this level of speaker is where rooms are like studios, essentially properly treated. And that is, once you go above that level, that is when you start hearing the difference. But the reality is, if you start sticking it in a glass big room like that, the difference between this and a lot cheaper pair of speakers is nil and zero. I mean, I was learning when I was choosing the monitors here, the amount of difference it was making. And this is a semi-treated room. This isn't fully treated. It's a semi-treated room, and I've got a Trinos system running as well. And that is what's making the difference between the speakers, not just the speakers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know. I think. Sorry, Steve. I'll come to you. I mean, speakers are important. They should be important to audio professionals. I mean, this is obviously an extreme case that we're talking about here. I mean, have you ever, because I don't think I've ever listened to something that expensive. I suppose the most expensive speakers I've probably ever listened to have been in a big studio, like the bigs, like probably something like I don't know what they would have been, maybe ATC SCM 200s or something like that, which I really like, and I would probably go for something like that. Have you heard anything of this sort of ilk before, Steve?
Yeah, not quite this expensive, but I think a few years ago I did a little. I was on this show, and I did it from our place down in Puerto Banús, and there was a Bang & Olufsen showroom that was as you went into the marina down there. And I remember just strolling in there one afternoon, and they had it wasn't even a Bang & Olufsen setup. I'm not quite sure which brand it was, but they said that they were doing like a a demonstration of this incredible system, but you had to come out of the showroom and go into the marina and go onto one of these yachts that was that I just assumed it was owned by a Saudi prince. But, you know, as Ty said, that's where your market is for this kind of thing. It's people who are exceptionally wealthy. Anyway, so I went on there and, it sounded absolutely extraordinary. But also I was more impressed by the boat and the rest
the
of the
environment it was in, yeah.
You know, than the speaker. I mean, I kind of got the impression that the Swedish salesman just didn't have anyone to talk to, so he thought he'd spend half an hour with me playing me Phil Collins. I seem to remember on this boat.
I'm so sorry,
and it sounded it sounded amazing, but. No, yeah.
Well, I suppose you would have been acoustically decoupled from anything. You know, the boat in itself is kind of acoustically decoupled, so you wouldn't have had any of that low frequency.
I think yes, and I think with so many of these things, they're either selling you a lifestyle or they're selling you something that complements your pre-existing lifestyle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I don't have a 100-foot boat that could be owned by a Saudi prince, so it didn't really.
Yeah, well, you're not right. Me neither. They do various other machines, which I mean, they do look. I mean, I can see how they would appeal because they're beautifully engineered. I mean, overly engineered, so perhaps but they do look kind of impressive.
They remind me a little bit of the robots that were in a sci-fi program called Caprica, which was on about 10 years ago, which was rather good. So that kind of amused me. But I was looking through the specs. And I think you mentioned already that they're talking about these being the most time domain correct loudspeaker in Wilson's history, down to 1/5 millionth of a second, which I don't really know what that gives you, frankly. And that's 5,000 kilohertz, which I tried to imagine what that sounded like, and all I could come up with was that's going to sound really high.
Yeah, I don't know what the frequency response or the time response. I'm not sure which.
The time. They said the time domain, and then just earlier I was just doing a quick calculation. Like, what is the distance that a sound wave would travel at 5,000 kilohertz? And I've got 0.000067 meters. So I'm just thinking that you could have the speakers that are so incredibly aligned, but then you turn your head and
it's gone.
Oh, it's screwed. Yeah. But I think the whole time alignment thing, it does work, because I mean, I think on your recommendation, Nick, I basically, when I was testing the monitors, which ones to get, I got some of the key threes that you had pointed me in the direction of. So I got a pair of the key threes in, and there's a lot of DSP. I mean, they are all DSP essentially to make the whole time alignment thing work. And it does make, you know, when you turn it off and on, it does make a difference. It's not just snake oil. You know, it really does make a difference.
Clarity and tightness and focus.
How accurate do you need it to be, Ty? How accurate do you need it to be?
Well, ironically, this is the reason that I don't have key threes behind me as we speak, because although they were very accurate and very clinical, you could basically fool them. And I don't want to sit here damning them, because they are great speakers. You know, they are great. They're very entertaining. But in terms of accuracy for mixing, it was literally a case of you could do some mixes on them and think you absolutely nailed it, and you'd then transfer it and it would be amazing. And then you could do other things with it that literally completely fooled them. I mean, I just remember one instance with a snare drum where I had, at the time, I think I had 4 other sets of monitors that I was comparing it to. And on all the other 4 set of monitors, this snare drum sounded like the same snare drum. Obviously differences, but the same snare drum. And it came to the key threes, and there was a huge dip. There was a huge dip around 150, 200 hertz that just literally disappeared. And the snare drum sounded nothing like it did on every other set of monitors. And because that had all the DSP, I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe this is actually the correct one. And then I did some recording and testing and tried it on other stuff, and it's not. It was at that point that I just went, do you know what? as a master, kind of pair to mix on, I can't live with these, because if it can fool you, and it was a completely fooled the system, and I've never heard it on any other monitor, and so so that's why they disappeared. But they sound great. The whole DSP time alignment thing does work, but
yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't for me, that's for sure, though. But
okay,
and ended up with these big things instead. So
yeah, well, they do look nice. Anyway, I just thought it was worth putting in there, because I just thought, yeah, that's kind of cool. Let's. What are we? Well, I might go. Should we go back to the number one, which is the Fault Octave? Let me just get the website up. It's a new hardware synth that is essentially a wavetable module that allows you also to. Apparently says you'll be able to load Serum patches, which is a big deal to a lot of people, because Serum is ultimately, the voice for a lot of contemporary productions, and it's certainly for like rhythm and bass-based stuff. Yes, I mean it does other things as well, obviously, but Serum is a synth that people really go for, and obviously having hardware control over that is an interesting idea. I mean, I do think that what he said was he actually has to manually translate them over, but they're.
And welcome.
Yes, I won't say any more, because the audio is terrible on the voice. So yeah, we're live on Kickstarter. Well, let's have a look, see what it's doing on Kickstarter.
It's already done. Yeah, okay. It's already.
It's been and gone. 29 days to go. So they're doing okay. So this is the Center Serum inspired Murat modular wavetable synth, and they've got 29 days to go, and they're already more than twice what they need. This kind of looks interesting. And maybe I'll come to you first, Steve. Serum, does Serum feature much in your productions? I mean, it features in a lot of people's productions. It's a very prominent synth, very well thought of.
No, I absolutely, I love Serum. I mean, I know that I tend to enthuse quite a lot when I come. Definitely my sort of favourite software. Useful in a lot of ways. I don't make EDM or that kind of thing, but what I found that Serum is really useful for is, of course, making your own wavetables. And what I found is particularly good at is taking a sample, let's say like a sample of a guitar, just a single note, and creating a wavetable that will have 256 different frames, but you can then isolate individual frames and morph between those frames, and you end up with a digital sound that's got a large part of the movement of a mechanical, electromechanical sound, like an electric guitar. And you end up with just something that, well, it's unique. Frankly.
Right.
And Serum does that for you really easily. Now, this is what really interests me about this module. It's the ability to take those software sounds and have them in a hardware format. It's something that I've been wanting for a long time. I know actually there's the chord ModWave. I don't know when it's going to be available, but there's talk that synthesizer will also be able to load in Serum wavetables. In this, though, it's not clear to me from the website what kind of refinement is required in order to get the wavetables into this unit.
Right.
So it doesn't actually load in presets, as far as I can tell. It's not like you get the
no. Well, I've got actually here. It says it supports Serum and Dune 2 format wavetables, so you can load the wavetables in. And WAV, you could do WAV files, but I think some of the actual patch mapping, from what I read of the when I was watching the long form video there and reading on the website, there are patches can be ported sort of en masse. I think there needs to be some sort of interpretation in between. So perhaps it's not something that the individual can do. I'd have to check that.
Well, that will be interesting because, the editing facilities that exist within Serum to make bespoke wavetables are extraordinary, quite frankly. You can go as deep into it as you like. I'm not afraid of mathematics. In fact, I embrace it. But you can actually create your own functions that draw out waves and multiple waves in whatever way that you want. So that's kind of interesting. But I don't know. I'm not sure whether this is going to be the machine for me. Simply because I'm not really sure what I would get from having it's monophonic, isn't it?
No, it's polyphonic. It's poly.
Oh, it's polyphonic.
It is actually poly.
So,
yeah, 4 voices.
But it's right. So it's paraphonic in the sense that you've got 4 pitches that can be outputted at the same time. I think
yes, I don't know about that, but I'm not sure if it's actually whether it says 4 polyphonic 4 voices. So I'm guessing, and you can have multiple oscillators per voice in total. The Center can deal with as many it can have as many as 200 oscillators. So that means.
Okay, well that sounds terrific. I think what it comes down to, whether this would be a goer for me, is essentially how enjoyable it is to work with the unit. You know, that's I think for me the defining aspects of the synthesizer for whether I'm going to buy it and keep it these days. It's not so much the facilities, but would it take me somewhere that Serum can't?
That's true. Well, and I guess you could always MIDI control that up, can't you, to make the environment that you want. Just a few facts and figures quickly. It's September 2021, and it's going to be about 273 quid, which isn't actually that unreasonable for a bespoke custom module like this. Wavetable synthesis is a big deal, though, isn't it? It's high. I mean, it's kind of it's the sound of now, or certainly has been in the past. If that's not an oxymoron.
No, when we saw this, I just started to tot up how many wavetable hardware synths I've got, and I've got 8. So it's actually got quite a part in my gear setup. Wavetable synthesis can be incredibly useful in terms of sound design. It can be fantastic. Obviously the more sophisticated ones means you can go deeper, as Steve was saying. And I mean, from my point of view, Serum is very much a no-go for me. I just don't like it. I don't like the sound of it. It has a sheen. It has a sound. It's it's just not for me. I can understand why it's such a huge part of EDM and that kind of scene, and why it is the sound that you hear everywhere. And I get that, but it's not a sound that works for me at all. It's one of those synths that has a certain sound, and I just don't like it particularly. And so I mean, I worked with someone on a project a couple of years ago that they were really into it and used it loads, and I just didn't take to it at all. So with this, obviously they're playing on the fact that it can import the Serum wavetables, which obviously is one of their selling points. But I'd almost, from personal point of view, I'd kind of go, okay, no, that's fine. Shut up about that bit. Let's talk about the other bits. And I think the only slight problem I have is on that level, you have to take the demos that are available and listen to what it actually sounds like now, not about what's promised, because they're saying hopefully it will have this and hopefully it will have that. And so, but I have to say, just taking it on how it sounds at the moment, in the videos, it doesn't sound that great. I mean, that's the reality. When they're turning around making a big thing, going, and we've layered 48 oscillators on top of one another, and you listen to it, and it doesn't sound that. It just
mushy.
doesn't sound that great.
Well, in my experience, the wavetable synthesis is all about the interpolation between the frames. If you get
absolutely.
And like I did a thing on pigments recently, and that's got really nice interpolation, and you get a real sort of, it's an organic sound. It can either, because at its very earliest stage, the kind of early Waldorfs, it was kind of clunky and steppy because that's all that was available technology. The modern ones, which have this smooth transition, are a joy to hear, I think, aren't they?
Some of them are, but that's what I mean. It is that thing of, it really is one of those kinds of synthesis where, although it's called wavetable, and there's so many synths that call themselves wavetable synths, they do all sound completely different. I mean, there's some things that, I mean, some of this, for example, the wavetables, when you're using the Medusa, for example, it's really a bit gritty and lo-fi and a bit, it's not great, but that has a certain quality about it. And then you take something like the Solaris, which again is wavetables, and sometimes it has exactly the same. It's like for my Microwave XT has the same wavetables in as the Solaris, and yet they sound nothing like one another. you know, and again, it is about the way that it actually is moving between the wavetables. So it is one of those types of synthesis where it can very much have a sound, and that's, I think, it's just that's why.
Which is interesting, because that's almost pure maths, isn't it? It's the maths that makes it sound, which is a kind of interesting concept, I suppose, in many ways. Yeah, fun.
Yeah, I think just to build on what Ty was saying, I mean, I've been using the Argon 8 quite a lot just recently, and it sounds very, very different to Serum, the sound of which I really like, by the way. But
you're allowed to.
What I've noticed is one of the things that I'd noticed about Serum was that pretty much everything it does, you know, I fall in love with, except for what it does when you modulate the two oscillators together. So, for example, the FM capabilities on Serum, not great at all. On the Argon 8, though, same overall sort of synthesis approach, wavetables, but the FM facilities in the Argon 8 are a completely sort of unsung kind of hero, I would say, of what it can do. You get all of the simplicity of just a one modular, one carrier oscillator FM sort of algorithm, but then you've got all the fantastic movement within the wavetables, which are smooth as a smooth thing, and just you end up just in places that wavetables and FM individually just wouldn't be able to take you. Put them together and they sound tremendous. So yeah, there's a huge difference in sound between these synthesizers. But I love Serum.
Good. Well, that's absolutely fine, and there's nothing to apologise for there. Let's just take a quick break and listen to.
iZotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse iZotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
Or if you want to save yourself a few quid, we've also got Sonic Talk, iZotope.com/Sonic Talk. If you start there and use the code Sonic10 at checkout, you can save up to 10% on all non-subscription and hardware products there. And in fact, they've got, just about see it there, $49. There's 11 plugins as part of the community appreciation bundle. And I suspect you may, in fact, be able to get that 10% on that, but we'll have to see. $49 is not bad, but we want to say thank you very much to iZotope for supporting the show. Much appreciated. Okay, let's see. Where should we go next? We've got a couple of things here. So we could do workflow or we could do studio. The Star Wars studio. Do we want to do the studio or the neat?
We can do them both, can't we?
We could probably do them both. All right, let's go. So this is no, that's not it. It's this one. No, it's not. Good grief, I've got it completely wrong. Where is it? Damn!
No.
Hey guys,
there we go. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Again,
Hooray.
A road trip with Vanessa in the Netherlands, our favorite country, except for the driving. It's a little boring.
So this is a video by John Sine, who goes to visit.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to find my mouse so I can fast forward it.
Go as fast as you want to.
So we come into the studio of
Man Beach.
Nice.
So this is
Maarten Vorwerks. This is his home studio, but he's really into Star Wars. And I mean, it's in an old swimming pool. And this is the control room, which is, it's just an amazing piece of design designed by Misha Jacobi, who I believe is an eminent designer.
Yeah.
Star Wars themed. And it
Well, I
wasn't
mean,
really
it's-
this.
I mean-
This piece wasn't necessarily what an amazing, which it is an amazing studio. It'd be a great place to work. It was kind of like, how far do you go? You know, because ultimately, for me, a studio has to be living and breathing. And if you design something too highly, then anything that comes along that doesn't fit in with your initial vision, which is bound to happen with technology, might end up meaning you have to start again or cut a big hole in something or whatever. I'm going to come to you first, Ty, because I know this is something that you are currently going in. I mean, amazing. I mean, I've seen your studio. It's great. And, it's not as locked down as something like that. It's not as kind of everything hidden away and sort of, beautifully presented, because it has to live and breathe. You want to be able to take a keyboard out and move it around or whatever, and you have to surely have a living and breathing space for work.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I have to say everything about that studio for me was everything that I would absolutely hate. I mean, no, on every level, because it was all filmed with a wide-angled lens, and so if you actually work out how big the actual space where you're sitting is, it's actually quite small. And I went and looked at the designer, and I went and looked at his designs and the studio he's made, and all of his builds tend to be, because obviously he's thinking acoustically as well, they're very small and clean, they're very small enclosed spaces, and I'd hate it. I would absolutely hate it. The second thing is, anything that has a theme, in my eyes, is just automatically total tack. I cannot cope with if it's a Star Wars theme or a film theme or whatever kind of theme. This is all, I should point out, this is all very personal point of view. It's a kind of, grow up. We're not kids anymore. We're not kids anymore. And so a studio is a studio. And I want it to be a space, as you say, a living, breathing space for me to work and inspire. If that works for him and inspires him, that is absolutely brilliant. But as you say, if you look at it wouldn't work for me. If you look at the gear that he's got, it's incredibly minimal. He basically just does all the work in the box. That's fine. But there's no room for, as you say, for error. There's no room for expansion. There's no room for change. Because all the stuff in here is completely bespoke, AKA made it. And so it's all bespoke for this space, but it's all made so that at any point, anything can be changed and moved. When they were wanting to embed the nuage desk and when, kind of embed the 55 and all this kind of thing, I was like, no. This needs to be, if I want to change this and move it, I don't want to have to get the whole studio redesigned just to change one piece of gear. And so you're exactly right. In here, things come and go and get changed and move around. And that's how it has to, for me, that's how it has to be. So there's no theme, there's no novelty, there's no tackiness. It's a very functional working space. And that's just the way my head personally works.
But there is aesthetic involved in designing any space anyway. Like
don't get me wrong.
You choose the colour for the walls or whatever it may be. So yeah,
there's a huge amount of aesthetic, but it's literally it's done in a kind of functional kind of way. The only non-functional thing about this studio is the fact that I have fancy coloured lights all around. That's the only.
Well, that's quite a common thing. That's the thing that people often do, because that means you can change the environment very quickly without having to rebuild it.
Absolutely. That's it. It's that in itself becomes living and breathing, because some days, believe me, I will be in a green mood, or I will be in a purple mood, or I'll be whatever it is. It's something as easy as that to do it. But the expense and lengths that he went to fit these, he did say how many fiber optic lights were going in to cause that kind of star effect, and the cost of that and the time involved in that and all of that. I mean, you want to make sure you got that right, wouldn't you? That's what that was exactly. Kind of my point, really. The fact that it's like, well, I couldn't nail it down. That I'd feel so uncomfortable with actually going that far, because when it's built and you go, I was wrong about it. What I actually wanted to do is have that there, and it's like too late for a long time, unless you're really absolutely. And it's the same thing with soffit speakers. Is the fact that it's absolutely fantastic that he's had those are one-off monitors and made for that space and that whatever. But at certain points, what happens if you want to change those monitors, or what happens if you want to adapt? And when they're as bespoke as that, and especially when they're soffit, kind of mounted, which we all know the issues when it comes to soffit mounting speakers anyway, from when the 80s, where everyone did it, and then most people then regretted it and ended up mixing on the near fields because they actually believe the near fields, not the main monitors. And I'm not saying that's what's happened here, but there is that thing that the moment you start getting things soffit mounted, it's that thing of you're in there for the long term, the good or the bad, you're in there for the long term. And obviously he the way he thought about this is very bespoke to him, and that's fantastic, and it obviously works for him. But for me, just my idea of hell. So.
Steve, I mean, I can see your space is fluid. You haven't got things built into cabinets. You've got tables, you've got shelves, you've got things that you move around. I don't know about the rest of the room, but I mean, what do you tell?
No,
I mean, have you actually done it where you have built a bespoke studio and considered those things, and then thought, did I do that right?
Not in this house. No, I used to have. I had a couple of studios actually up in Newcastle back in the 90s when I did all that. But no, I've set up this room largely as an inspiring environment for writing, because I don't really complete. I don't do mixing or complete productions here. This is more a place. It's sort of my happy place to make new things.
Very important,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking what Ty was saying there about having a themed room, and it reminds me. There's a hotel in Brighton. I won't say its name, but each room is themed in one way or another. Like there's a Marilyn Monroe room, and there's a
Crazy Bear. Is it Crazy Bear?
Pardon?
Sorry, carry on. Is it Crazy Bear?
Sorry. And it reminded me of a couple of things. First of all, we did a promotion down there, about 20 years ago, where I think it was like a Vodafone room, and it was the only room in the hotel where you couldn't get a Vodafone signal. It was just the
irony!
Amazing.
That's brilliant.
But also the other thing is that for a while, when I had singers and other collaborators coming down and stay in Brighton, I would send them to that hotel, and their choice of rooms, because they were coming down and working during the week, and the hotel was very quiet. But almost everybody said the novelty of being in a Marilyn Monroe room wears off very quickly. It's sort of like a bit like it was in that video, and that you walk in and your initial impression is wow, and after a little while you think, this is actually mad, isn't it? This is a bit mad.
I suppose,
so
yes, I guess
we changed hotels in the end, and it's. I just don't think ultimately it wouldn't be conducive for me to work. I just feel a bit like I was, I'm not in a Star Wars mood every day, basically.
That's a very. I think that's a fair point.
I think that's a totally fair point. But also exactly what Steve was saying. It's the fact that about his happy place. And it's the fact that if you actually look at that as an environment, and exactly as Steve said, when you initially walk in, it really is, wow, this looks amazing. But when you actually envisage, that's where you sit, like I do in here, for 20 hours every day, you're working, and you're just sat there in that environment, which is incredibly claustrophobic. If you actually look what's behind you, it's then to a narrow corridor with the screens all around you. It's an incredibly small space, and that's where you're going to sit for hours and days and weeks and months. I would get so claustrophobic in that space, and it would in no way be my happy place.
Yeah,
and
there's no distraction, is there?
No.
You can't look out and go, oh, look, there's a heron in the tree, or whatever it may be.
Well, this is the thing, as you know, on my third, I'm getting the other room done, and I'm having to do the design quickly. And we all know that glass is the last thing that you have in when you're having studios done. You don't have glass. Every studio designer will say, please don't have glass. But the reality is, where I live has some beautiful views, it's more important for me to have, as Steve said, the happy place, the place where I want to be, and I find inspiring. And if that means I have glass so I can look out and see this beautiful view, rather than being sat in this, the pod of an X-Fighter, I mean, for God's sake, that'll soon wear off. But for me, again, it's all personal. But anyway,
no, fair enough.
The place where I'm sitting the place where I'm sitting right here, talking about glass, one of the reasons why I chose to make my happy place is this window here, and there was a tree that's recently been pruned. Having that kind of, it's not wildlife, urban life, shall we say, just makes the time that I spend working on music in this room enjoyable, and you feel connected to something. I think that the studio we saw in that video, I wouldn't really feel like I was connected to it.
Well, I mean, here I am in a room with, I mean, there's a big window here, but if I open it, it kind of completely changes. Let me have a bit of live window opening, see what happens. And also, it's very bright, and also you'll notice my video editing screen is against the window, and I can't edit video with bright sunlight behind. I'll do myself in. So sometimes you have to just keep the windows closed.
I think looking with video it's a different consideration, but I was just thinking that the first studio that we had with my old band up in Newcastle was in the Arts Centre on Westgate Road, and it was a long room, and down one side it was all windows, and what you lost in terms of sonic accuracy and, well, it wasn't a studio room at all, gained by the fact that you had a view out onto one of the busiest streets in one of the busiest cities in the north, and the vibe that came in just essentially informed everything that happened in that room. So I don't exactly miss it, but it was.
Well, I had a studio. I had a studio in the centre of town,
and it was £20 a week.
Oh, nice. I had a studio in the centre of town, which is right next to the railway station, which meant I could easily distract myself by, I'll just nip out and buy a paperclip or a pencil or a piece of some tape to put on, it's very easily distracted, which you don't always want. There you go. I mean, you're not.
Can I just... Yeah. No, can I just ask if Steve was just had a moment there of enlightenment, because it really did look to me like someone was shining down upon him from upon high, and he was either seeing kind of Mary Jesus and all the rest, or he was about to die. But the entire screen completely white, completely turned into a whiteout. Did you feel your heart twinging? Were you having a mini heart attack then, and were being called?
No, I do a lot of meditation time. That's what it is. No.
Oh, okay.
This window, it's west facing, and like the weather's so changeable at the moment. I can see, I've got this huge view now. This tree is being back, and so the clouds move, the sun shines in, and the alpha correction on this camera just goes haywire.
Yeah.
But it's all very celestial.
It was beautiful. It was very celestial. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. It was a beautiful moment.
Right, let's crack on with the last... Now, I hope I've got the right... is this the right... Yes, this is Christoffer Lislegaard, a Norwegian artist who does a lot of controllerism and was getting a bit sick of not remembering what they all were. So what he did was he built himself a little doodah with...
I think the question that I've been asked more than anything is, how do I remember what all the different knobs and buttons control? So today,
so he basically built this thing using a...
to remember.
Where is it? There's a lot of talking. There is an Arduino Uno and a little LCD shield. About 35 quid plus his time to program.
The Arduino keypad LCD shield.
What he actually does then is every time he turns a knob, it shows the value and it shows the parameter that he's accessing, which actually when you've got maybe a mute MIDI controller means that, you don't have to label everything. And if things are changing every time, it means you only see it once and you go, okay, I can remember that, which actually seems, that's a great bit of DIY workflow hacking. And I just thought, I priced it up. I think that Arduino Uno is 17 quid and the LCD is about a tenner. Or 15 quid. So, for 35 quid, you've got that. I'm the sort of person that would probably go to those lengths. I love those kind of workflow hacks because I'm doing it all the time. Right now, I mean, the last thing I've plugged a a Raspberry Pi in the back of my telly because it's got enough USB power to boot up. So every time I turn the telly on, it boots up, the HDMI comes in, and it shows the live stats for Sonicstate on the screen here. And then I put a little button on the front that lets me shut it down safely. And I love doing all of that stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily a musical hack, but this thing, I mean, this would have taken quite a lot of work, I'd imagine. Ty, I mean, you're not the guy, are you? You tend to kind of identify it and say, I'll have that rather than build it. Although that's not, I mean, your workflow must have adapted over the years as well. You must have built custom.
No, I've built nothing. I've literally built nothing. I don't have my knowledge of electronics is zilch. My knowledge of coding or programming is zilch. I know is the answer. And I look at this, and sometimes, you know, kind of I look at people that do this kind of thing, and it's just like black magic to me, in the same way that some people look at what we do and the way we write music as being black magic. Yeah. I look at people that can code and program, and it's great. The only thing with this one particularly is that I was looking at it thinking, Christ, if I was going to do what he's done and go to this trouble, you know, at least use a bigger LED, so at least you can get, you know, kind of bigger, more information on. Because when you actually watch him when he's doing it, he turns the knob, and a lot of it will just come up with depth 96, and I'm thinking, what depth of what? You know, and I think at least use a bigger LED. If you're going to go to this effort, use a bigger LED so you can actually put what the depth is. You know, what parameter completely. So, but other than that, I mean, hats off to him. Hats off to anyone that can do this kind of making stuff, because that isn't me. I either buy it or I pay someone to do it. I'm really not that man at all. I'm fairly useless, to be fair. Outside of music, I mean, as a general rule, I am useless. So,
not a practical guy.
No.
I must admit, I do like a bit of I do like working with practical things, you know, and like I say, I will, you know, get dirty and try and do coding stuff, because I just need to solve a problem, and to find it's so specific, the problem I might have to solve. It's quicker for me to figure out how to do it than find someone who might understand what I mean. And it's always been the case.
That's great.
Because of great. But I think that's just because of the nicheness of it all. I don't know, Steve, are you a kind of workflow life hacker kind of person?
No, not really. I did used to be as a kid, in the sense that I used to build electronic kits and oscillators and noise generators.
Okay.
And
I've never done that.
Yeah, it's kind of where my interest in synthesis began. Little sort of boards you could get from Tandy's, which is no longer with us. So hobbling things together like that, it's kind of beyond me, and I have a bit of a short attention span, so I think I'd probably lose interest before I'd actually completed the job. But what I do quite like doing, though, is using non-musical software in a kind of musical way, in the sense it's kind of helpful. So there's a little program called Todoist. It's actually not, it's like a sort of cloudy thing, and it's where you to-do lists, you know, just tasks.
Yep.
But what I found is really useful with that is that if you're just going about your day or walking around the streets or out with friends or whatever, if you're looking for lyrical ideas or to put into songs, often things that people say or things that just appear in your head can it's useful to kind of jot them down. But I find that just putting them into a notebook, I'll lose it. If you stick it into these list making applications, that's brilliant, because you can keep them separate. You know that they're there, and on the day where you need to say something clever in a song, you can just refer back to that program.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, I think there's lots of that. I mean, I've been doing a lot of program. Before we do that, actually, I think he's in there still. Christoffer Lislegaard, hurrah, I made the show. He's actually listening and watching, which is fantastic. So hello to you, Christoph. I thoroughly recommend you check out his Organelle in the Snow video. I posted a link to his channel, so do check out some of the other stuff he does. It's jolly good. You're looking biblical there. It's actually, you know, it's kind of like, I feel like we should have some sort of choral pad underneath you with the voice of God.
Extraordinary.
It is amazing, yeah. It's like when you have a camera on top of a skyscraper that can't handle that much light. It's like that's what we're getting here. It's 2001, Steve. You're about to be absorbed.
The last time I'll do it. I'll do the show from this room.
No, I think it's fine. I think it's absolutely fine. It's just because you're wearing white as well. It's just like you're blending into this. What would we call it? The singularity, shall we say?
Do you know what? It's a fantastic album cover.
Yeah, it certainly is. It is actually. Let me just get rid of that, and I'll just do a quick. I'll take a snapshot.
Yeah.
There we go. A couple of snapshots. I'll send you the pictures so you can see them in their full. Although you are a little pixelated, I don't suppose it matters too much. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. Well, anyway, I thought I'd bring that up, and it's great that he's watching as well. Fantastic. One thing I will say, if people are into kind of, maybe they're not into coding and they're not into, a really good place to start is something like an Elgato Stream Deck, which is just a little box with buttons on it that you can have icons.
I've got one of those.
Lots and lots. But once you start doing that, then you think, well, if I could get it to do, and then you start thinking, well, maybe I could Apple script that. Maybe and it does start to kind of make your mind inquire as what can I do with this button press that would enable me to do this really complicated thing that I need to do many, many times. And I think that's a good start.
I've got one of those, but all I've done is I've got it set up for shortcuts in Cubase, and that's it. I don't use it for anything else. Am I missing out on something?
It'll do a whole lot of things. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff it could do. It's got quite deep system and other integration. It's just like you just think, oh, actually, what would that? I could use that button for something. What could I use it for? And it might be, making the lights green or what, I don't know, whatever it may be.
Well, in which case, erase all of that I said before. I'm really useful at this kind of stuff, and I've got a Stream Deck and use it all the time for everything in my life. Yeah,
excellent. Well, I am glad to hear that. I am glad to hear that it's working out for you. My camera's not coping with the extra light coming in from outside because the sun is shining as well. I think we're probably. I think that was it, wasn't it? We've done all our topics. I think we have. I was going to ask if is there time for the what have you discovered recently? What have you been? What plugin or synth or something that have you working on? It's something that we did last week and it proved to be quite.
I like. Do you know? I like that bit. I saw it last week and I think it's great.
There we go.
It's a great idea. Well, I don't really have anything to add to it because I don't really know. No, this week I have mainly been. I've been using my MPC X this week.
Really?
Which it's been. It's because of this, doing the studios, getting it all sorted, and making space and aligning stuff, and so I had a space where I was going to have the machine studio, and it was sat there, and I don't have a great relationship with machine, if I'm honest. I've never have done. It's always kind of it's been more of a pain than it's been worth, to be fair. And I suddenly thought, well, how about rather than using that, why don't I put the MPC X? Because as you know before, I'm a big MPC man over the decades, and it kind of fitted in, and so I kind of started messing with that, and it's literally like muscle memory. It just all suddenly the whole MPC thing just completely suddenly came back because I hadn't really got into it for a while, and lots of MPC X love, I have to say. Over the last
is the MPC days. The MPC X the one with is that standalone or is that is that standalone or is that
it's the standalone, but it does also serve as a controller as well. It basically does.
Oh, both. It's the big one with all the controls on the CVX as well. Yes,
that's the big one. Yeah.
So that does look good.
And I think the great thing about it is that it's one of those that every time they bring out a new version, they're really adding something quality to the party. It's not one of these where every update is just fix a few things and throw one thing new. Every time, all of the updates, it's bringing out quality stuff. So the last one was
good team on the MPC.
Absolutely, the last one with all the drum synths, and I've never really got into the drum synths built into it, and so I started going to those, and oh my god, I mean, it's really, really, you can get quite deep with it. It's fantastic. So that's I'm suddenly giving it a lot of love for the MPC X this week. So.
Excellent. What about yourself, Steve? Has there been a kind of something that's been floating your boat recently, or a new thing you've discovered? I heard a guitar there, I thought.
Yeah, there really is. It's this.
Oh, is that
I treated myself to
Jaguar? Is that a Jaguar?
A new guitar. This is no, I wasn't going to go full shoegaze. This is a Jazzmaster guitar, and I decided to get it in to help complete a project that I'm working on right now. because I had a Fender guitar for a long time that's just not really that great. So I've upgraded. But what I've found really exciting about playing guitar again, which I haven't done in a long time, is it's so enjoyable to have your body next to your instrument. Do you know what I mean? You can feel an actual physical connection with what you're playing. It kind of changes your relationship with your music kind of fundamentally. And so I've been playing a lot of this guitar, and I also just decided that, you know, I was playing a few things and it sounded all right. And I was thinking, oh, you know, it's slightly out of tune, but I'll fix that in Melodyne, or it's slightly out of time and I'll just move it around. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. That's what I would be doing if I was with a synthesizer or just using a soft synth. I'd be getting it kind of perfectly aligned within Logic or whatever. But instead, go back to the guitar and play what I needed to get.
Play it again.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, do it again, basically. Yeah, I've got the time and I can play. So, but that was so extraordinarily enjoyable. And it felt like a bit of a release as well. There's just something really nice about playing an acoustic instrument. I mean, I know this is an electric guitar,
mechanical instrument.
It's about moving parts, you know.
Yeah.
So this is what I've been enjoying, and I would recommend to everybody. You know, no matter what style of music you're doing, there's something about
a real instrument
sound being made in real instruments. You know, that you don't get from anything else.
Yeah.
No, can I just tell you this? This is actually just vaguely amusing. So, you know, I was doing that Greta Thunberg thing a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I was working on a track, and I spent ages working on this guitar track, but synth, you know, kind of using samples, working to try and get it how I wanted. And I was working on it for about 3 hours to get it right, and it just wasn't kind of working. And I swear my head just suddenly went, why don't I just get a guitar? Because I can play, I mean, enough. I'm not a guitarist, but I can play enough. So I've got loads of guitars next to. So I went and just picked up a guitar, came, played it, first take. It literally took 1 minute to record it. That was it.
Yeah.
But I'd worked for 3 hours trying to get it to sound right. At no point up in those 3 hours had I thought, why don't you just get a guitar? It was the same way that, you remember when I did the vagina thing, the vagina program, it was all based around clapping. It was only after I'd finished the project that I'd using all these multitude of samples and libraries of clapping, and I spent hours getting the clapping to sound right. And it was only after I'd finished it I thought, why didn't I just clap? But so you're absolutely right. Real instruments is you know, it does make a difference. It does add a certain human quality that you can't get otherwise. So yeah, good move, Steve. Well done.
Excellent. Well, I think that's good. What have I been doing? I've been discovering the joys or not of and the power of Google spreadsheets, which is a bit weird. Ooh. Yeah. Well, you know, for those of you like, well, I'll tell you what it was that inspired me. It was, I've done an interview with Helena Rice, who is a great musical artist who's been doing some visual things, but her background is in marketing, so she keeps an absolute tab on her like Spotify plays, her YouTube plays, her Amazon Music plays, all of that stuff. And so she used to work in retail, so she'd have these massive spreadsheets with graphs saying, you know, on Tuesday we spent, you know, this much in advertising, got this many plays, and she's just got this massive kind of this is my digital life of my music project. And it's an astonishing viewpoint of, you know, how deep you can go and how sometimes that can really help you figure out what's going to work and what isn't going to work. I mean, it's not for everybody at all, but you know, if you're marketing yourself. Anyway, I'm not being very convincing. When I said that studio was my idea of living hell, all of a sudden I've got a new version of living hell. I'll tell you, many years ago, I went to Glastonbury, as you do, and I walked into one of the booths, and I thought, I'm going to have a palm reading. Of course, I don't believe it; it's all a load of crap. But I just thought, I'm going to do this, and I put my palm out, thinking it was a load of rubbish. And the woman just looked at me, and just the first thing she said was, "Oh my God, I've never met anyone that hates paperwork as much as you do." That's the first thing she said to me. Which, right. If anyone that knows me knows that nobody hates paperwork as much as I do. It is literally,
God, I can't do it. So Google spreadsheets for me is just like,
well, okay, fair enough. I mean, if you're into any kind of data, or you need to do any of that stuff, I didn't realize what you could do with them, and they're incredibly powerful. But yes, I take your point. It's not for everybody, and it certainly isn't for you. So
isn't for me.
Maybe what I should do is start putting the show topics in a Google spreadsheet and share that with everybody each week. That would force you to have aversion therapy.
No, it'd force me to be on holiday every Wednesday.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure as ever. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for Steve, and thank you for Ty. It's been good. And we should say thank you very much to our friends at iZotope and also Modal for helping support the show. It's been much appreciated. And don't forget, if you're interested, you can join us on Patreon. I think I've got a thing that will go up here. Oh, no, that's not it. It's that, isn't it? That's the one. Patreon/Sonicstate. So, yeah, there we go. It's all there. Thank you to all of you folks in the chat room. It's been a real pleasure as well. Thank you, everybody. And I think that's, well, yes, what can I say? Thank you very much. That was a Sonic Talk, episode 669, 670 next week. That's it. We're done for the week. See you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye now.